Welcome to the real world. My name is Cameron, joined by Anthony in this episode. How you doing?
Doing good.
Awesome. We are here for episode 94 of the Real World Podcast. We're talking all about Planet of the Apes. Thank you so much for joining us here on the Real World YouTube channel. Make sure to hit the like button, hit subscribe, hit the bell so you get notified of all our videos. We're over 500 subscribers now, which is pretty exciting.
That's cool.
On our way to 1,000. That's our next big goal. So help us get there by sharing the video. Make sure you follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Anthony and I are both on Letterboxd too, so you can follow us there. Those links are down below too. Let's kick things off as we usually do with some movie news. All right, first up in movie news is Sigourney Weaver, who we know from Alien, Galaxy Quest.
Right.
She's in the Avatar movies.
Yes.
She is in talks to join the Mandalorian and Grogu movie.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's cool.
So I think that'd be a great pick. She's one of my favorite actresses. I like her and everything that she's done. Very excited about that movie. That's one of my favorite Star Wars projects ever. Huge fan of that series. So we'll have to wait and see who she ends up playing. Next up, Blade Runner. There's a new entry in the Blade Runner franchise coming out. It's a series.
Cool. Okay.
It's called Blade Runner 2099. And Michelle Yeoh is going to star as an aging Blade Runner, a replicant, at the end of her lifespan. So that's all that we know about the series so far. It is coming to Amazon Prime, but we don't have a release date yet. So we'll have to keep an eye on that. Next up, Vin Diesel is going to begin filming the fourth Riddick film. Have you seen all the Riddick movies?
I have actually.
Have you? Do you like those?
Yeah, I do.
I think they're really cool.
Yeah,
I think the second one is probably my favorite. The Chronicles of Riddick.
Yeah.
That's a really good one.
I think my favorite as well, yeah.
Yeah. This one is called Riddick Furia and is set to begin shooting August 26th this summer.
Oh, really?
David Towie is going to return. He's been the writer and director of all the movies, so he's coming back. And Vin Diesel, of course, coming back. We don't know any other cast members yet, but this will be the fourth film in this long-running franchise going on since the early 2000s. Glenn Powell is set to star in a new movie about Monsanto, starring Anthony Mackie, who we all know as the new Captain America, and Laura Dern, who people know from the Jurassic Park movies. They're going to be starring in this film. Glenn Powell also is set to star in J.J. Abrams' next movie, although there's been no title or no plot details released for that yet. Grendel is a new movie coming starring Jeff Bridges as this monster from the poem Beowulf. So this is a Beowulf film which will focus more on the villain. Beowulf will be played by Dave Bautista, which I think is great casting. Also, we'll have Bryan Cranston as King Hogthar. So that's a really good cast. I'm a big fan of all those actors. The Jim Henson Company behind the Muppets, they're going to be producing the film. It will be a live action film. We don't know if there's going to be a lot of, different kind of puppet creatures. Maybe I'm thinking more like Dark Crystal, maybe that kind of vibe might have that kind of feel to it, maybe. But we'll have to wait and see more details as they come out. There's a biopic coming out, a true story about the first man to ever climb Mount Everest. His name was Tenzing, and they haven't cast that lead role yet, but they have cast two other actors, and they're two actors I'm a big fan of. One is Tom Hiddleston, of course, Loki, and then Willem Dafoe, who we know as Green Goblin. So it's like two great Marvel actors coming and doing this big biopic about Mount Everest. There was a Mount Everest movie that came out a few years ago I liked. It was just called Everest. It was more set in the modern day, but this will be set a long, long time ago. So very curious to see what they end up doing with this movie. Next up, James Gunn revealed Superman to us. David Cornsweet in the costume.
I saw this actually.
Did you see this?
Yeah.
Man, this is really interesting. So the costume looks very different from any other Superman costume that we've seen, really.
I noticed that, especially the emblem.
The emblem is
a little different.
It is. It looks more like Kingdom Come, if you're familiar with that comic book.
Yeah.
It has more of a collar, like he does in the New 52 comics. So it's kind of a mix of a bunch of different things. I really like it. I think it'll look great on screen. I'm curious to see more of this movie and more of the tone and vibe that they're going for. I like that he kind of feels like just a regular guy putting his shoes on, going to work, as there's some crazy thing going on behind him. So yeah, I'm really excited to see what James Gunn does with this. This is going to kick off his DC universe of movies, which will
Mm.
be a new shared continuity of films, series, and video games, which will all
Oh,
cross
really?
over. Yeah, they're
Oh, I
all going
didn't
to
know
cross
that.
over.
That's
Yeah,
cool.
it's going to be a big shared universe full of all kinds of different things. So that film is set to release in July of 2025. Staying in the DC world, Batman Caped Crusader revealed the first look at this new animated series from Bruce Timm,
Cool.
who of course created Batman the Animated Series, the Justice League Animated Series, Superman, all that stuff, what's known as the DC Animated Universe. This is a totally separate universe. It's set in the 1940s, which gives it a very different
Okay.
vibe. Batman has a different look. It's really, really cool. They revealed Batman, they revealed Catwoman, they revealed Jim Gordon. It looks really interesting. There's been no voice cast announced yet, but this is coming very soon. It's coming to Amazon Prime August 1st of this year. All 10 episodes will drop on Amazon Prime. So very much looking forward to that. We'll have a review for you guys as soon as that comes out. We're huge DC animation fans, so be on the lookout for that. Andy Serkis, who we're going to be talking about a lot today on
Uh-huh.
the Planet of the
Right.
Apes
Yeah, yeah.
podcast, he is set to direct and star in a new Lord of the Rings movie titled The
Ooh.
Hunt for Gollum.
Oh,
So
cool.
he's returning as Gollum,
That's cool.
and he's going to
Okay.
direct the movie as well. He's directed a couple movies I liked. Venom: Let There Be Carnage.
Yeah.
That was him.
Okay.
And he also did the Netflix Mowgli movie, The Jungle Book, called
Right.
Legend of the
Yeah.
Jungle.
He also voiced was it Shere Khan
I think
or
he voiced Baloo.
no? Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I was about to say.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. He did a great job with that film. That's probably my
Right.
favorite film he's done yet. This is going to be produced by Peter Jackson, who directed the original Lord of the Rings and Hobbit movies. It is set for a release in 2026, so we'll be highly anticipating that. And yeah, I'm excited to see kind of what the story is. I'm guessing it's a prequel because he dies. Spoiler alert
Yeah.
in the
Yeah.
third movie.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, I'm guessing this will be kind of maybe Smeagol becoming Gollum. I think this
Oh,
is
that'd
probably
be
what
cool.
that's going to be
Yeah.
about. So yeah, we've had hints of that in the other movies, but we've never seen a full-length film with him. So very curious about it. We'll have to wait and see what it is, but we'll be on the lookout and give you guys more information as it's available. All right, folks. Well, that's it for movie news. Now it's time to jump into our main topic. First, we're going to review every Planet of the Apes movie, and then we will give our rankings from worst to best. Here we go. All right, folks. Well, this is it. This is the Big Apes podcast. I've got some special guests. You've already met Anthony. I introduced him up top, but Ben is on with us as well. How you doing, man?
I am doing well, my friend. How are you?
I'm doing great. Ready to go ape, man. Let's do
Hmm.
this. So
Apes together strong.
that's right. That's right. So yeah, let's jump in. I think I know Anthony and I have had a chance to rewatch all these over the past
Hmm.
week or so. Did you do any rewatch in prep or no?
Well, back in February, I believe, I went over to Sound Exchange and I grabbed the original five films on Blu-ray. So I
Nice.
finally got to watch some of the unrated cuts for some of the movies, which I'm like,
Oh
yes,
yeah.
yes, yes, I'm so excited. And then about 2 weeks ago, I rewatched the Caesar trilogy all in one day, actually. It
Oh
was
wow.
Oh,
quite the
cool.
experience,
That's
seeing them
cool.
all back to back. Great
Yeah.
time. And
Excellent.
then, yeah, last night I went to go see Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. So I'm
Great.
all ready.
Excellent, excellent. Well, let's jump in with the very first film, Planet of the Apes, from the year 1968. Um, this is, like it says on the cover, a breakthrough classic that started it all. It's a really groundbreaking movie for the science fiction genre specifically. This came out in again 68, so this is pre Star Wars. It's kind of in that era, but it's coming after all of the big sci-fi B movies of the 50s. So it's in an interesting place in film history. Directed by Franklin J. Schaffner, who directed some movies I really like. Papillon, Patton. He's a pretty prolific director back in the day. Had a budget of 5.8 million, ended up grossing 33.3 million, so it was a big hit back then. Look, this is a classic movie. The effects I think are great. They hold up very well, specifically the makeup. I mean, it's really phenomenal what they were able to achieve with the makeup. I think it's amazing. It holds up really well. it's a movie with a lot of big ideas. You know, they're dealing with obviously we'll be talking a lot throughout these movies about, you know, prejudice and classism, and you know, they deal with a lot of social themes that are really relevant, specifically to what was going on in the 60s and 70s when these first movies were coming out. Um, the music by Jerry Goldsmith, I think, is one of the all-time great scores. Very experimental, very percussion heavy, you know, great score there. Charlton Heston, I think, is one of the best movie stars ever. I'm a huge fan of Ten Commandments and Ben-Hur and Omega Man, all these great movies that he made back in the day. And this is one of the best. I really think this is one of his best performances. He's very charismatic, but at the same time, Taylor is kind of a nihilist. He's kind of unlikable in many ways. He doesn't really treat
Stoic.
Yeah, he doesn't really treat his fellow humans very well. He's got a very negative, cynical point of view. But I think he has a bit of a character arc, which is cool to see him go through. Of course, Kim Hunter is fantastic as Zira, and Roddy McDowall, who we're going to talk about throughout these movies, as Cornelius, and then as the other character he ends up playing later. But he's great here as Cornelius. It's got an iconic final twist, which is just one of the best endings to any movie ever. It still just gets my blood pumping every time I see that scene. I'm like, what? Even though I know what's coming, I'm like, what? How can it be that it's Earth all along? It's great, a great, great movie. Really enjoy it. Ben, why don't you give us some of your thoughts on this original Planet of the Apes movie?
I believe it was 2008, 2009 when I first watched Planet of the Apes. And the other thing that I knew about concerning Planet of the Apes was when I watched Mel Brooks's Spaceballs. That's how I accidentally got into Planet of the Apes. After watching Spaceballs, I found Planet of the Apes at the library, and when I first watched it, I remember being very. I was fascinated by it because it gave off some sort of a Star Trekian vibe in the
Sure.
opening, and then it turns into this apocalyptic, upside down, systematic political film. Even
Right,
though at
right,
the time I wasn't thinking about the nuanced themes implemented into it. I was only thinking about all the actors and makeup and how they were able to do that because they, I wouldn't say they looked for a majority like immediately like apes. They did look kind of like apes, but more evolved. And
right.
I think that was the point that was laid
Yeah,
across in the film. So it was it was a very poignant what if scenario
right.
if man's hubris led us to our downfall and primates took over. So it was very, very interesting film.
Hmm.
And the ending, like you said, it's very iconic. And I can't think of any other film in the franchise that has been as strong as that ending. At least so
Right.
far. So far, in my opinion. I mean, we've all had previous, no, future eight films. They've been good, but
Sure.
this film in particular, nothing's topped the Statue of Liberty for me. So
Yeah, it's an iconic shot. Anthony, any thoughts on this original Planet of the Apes?
Um, I watched this when I was younger, and I
Okay,
didn't really think much about it,
sure.
But rewatching it, I forgot how good it was. It
It is.
was really good, and
Yeah.
especially the beginning with the monologue and all that.
Oh
That was
yeah.
really good
Yeah.
too. And of course, the ending is
Yeah.
really iconic.
Great. Absolutely. Great. Great thoughts, guys. Let's move right along to 1970. So just 2 years later. Obviously, the first one's a big hit. Hollywood, as they do, they want a sequel as quick as possible, and so they get writers on board. They get a director Ted Post. I like a movie he did called Hang 'em High. It's a Clint Eastwood Western. So he's a director. I've actually seen a couple of his movies. Um, Couple of alternate titles for this film when they were first working on a sequel, because there's only one book, right? There's only one Planet of the Apes book written in 1963 by Pierre Boulet. And so when they went to make a sequel, they had to write an original screenplay. And they unfortunately didn't have the Twilight Zone's Rod Serling on board. He was busy working on other things. He wrote a draft of the screenplay for the original. But they went ahead and hired other writers to come in. And the first title was Planet of the Men, because they wanted Charlton Heston to come back in a big role and have him lead a human revolution against the apes. So that was an idea they had. Then they titled it Planet of the Apes Revisited, but they ended up titling it Beneath the Planet of the Apes. And so this was the sequel to the original movie. It had a lower budget of only 2.5 million. It's to me just a very bizarre sequel. I think they kind of went off the deep end here a little bit, going into the crazy underground world of mutated humans, and
Like, what was up with that?
it's
What was
such a
up with
bizarre
that?
idea. The nuclear bomb that they're worshiping. It's delving even deeper into the first one has that political commentary mixed with kind of a religious, commentary and allegory. This one kind of delves a little bit deeper into that, kind of this cult, that's created underground. And to me, it doesn't quite work as well as the original. I just really, it doesn't grab me. They try to bring in a new character who's just not very interesting. He's kind of Charlton Heston light, I feel like, because Heston only was able to work on this, I think, a couple days. He was working on another movie, so he came in for just a couple days to shoot his scenes. But yeah, to me, it just kind of falls flat. It's not as exciting. There's some cool ideas kind of in it, but it's just a little too out there for me. So, but it has another shocking ending, which is pretty crazy. So I got to give it credit for going all out with the ending again. But those are kind of my thoughts on it. It did gross 19 million, which made it, profitable for them, which is why they continued making these. But Ben, what are your thoughts on Beneath the Planet of the Apes?
This is what happens when your political sci-fi theoretical piece turns into a Saturday morning serial.
Right. Yeah. Sure.
That's pretty much how I would describe Beneath the Planet of the Apes. And I
Yeah.
find it to be very saddening that Charlton Heston, I didn't talk about him with the first Planet of the Apes, but as you said, he was incredible on that film. I loved how stoic he was and how defensive he had to be to
Yeah.
defend his flawed civilization that he came from, only to
Right.
discover that the world's gone upside down. He's actually on the planet that he hated to begin with.
Right.
So this film, he's only in the movie for like you said, 15, no, I think 10 minutes. 10 minutes tops. And so he doesn't really leave any effect on you until like the very ending, which pretty much comes out of nowhere in my opinion. But yeah, they have to introduce this other astronaut named Brent, and he looks exactly like Charlton Heston 2.0. I don't
Right.
understand why they had to cast someone who looks like Heston. They could have cast somebody new, in my
Yeah.
opinion.
That's an odd choice.
And then they had to give him a journey similar to Taylor, but only give it like 15 minutes of exposition, which felt crammed.
Yeah.
And then we get to the mutants underground with psychic powers, like the early X-Men, to be more precise.
Yeah.
So
Right.
a lot of it just did not work for me,
Mm.
especially when I'm older. When I was younger, I thought it was cool. It was an interesting entry, but the older I get, the more I look back on it, it really does give the first movie a disservice, in my opinion. I think for a sequel to Planet of the Apes, it should have been a lot better.
Yeah. Yeah.
It should have been a lot better.
Yeah. I
But
agree.
sadly, that's what we got.
Right. Anthony, any thoughts on Beneath the Planet of the Apes?
Well, you see the first one, it was going up like this.
Yeah.
And then the second one
Yeah.
down.
Kind of knows that.
It went below the surface.
Right, yeah.
Exactly.
Let's go there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The only good thing about this movie is probably the ending. It's like the
Yeah.
planet blew up, and that's it.
The end.
Yeah,
It's a
that's
very
all
definitive
research.
ending.
Yeah.
Right. So, all right. Well, we'll move right along to 1971, just a year later. Again, they wanted to kind of churn these out pretty quick. And so they end up creating a sequel originally titled Secret of the Planet of the Apes. But the final title was Escape from the Planet of the Apes. And this one takes it in a radical different direction. It really changes up the formula big time. It's not another astronaut crash landing on the Planet of the Apes and having discovered the society and all that. This is the opening scene is so good because it's just the ship in the water, and the U.S. military comes and pulls it out, and the astronauts walk out, and you're like, okay, who are these new human astronaut characters? And they take off their helmets, and it's apes. So it's a great kind of shocking opening that we have there. And Don Taylor was brought in to direct this one. He directed The Final Countdown, some other movies back in the 60s and 70s. This one had a budget of $2 million. It ended up grossing 12.3 million. So it's a little bit of a lower gross and a lower budget, but still successful enough to, again, keep the franchise going. This one, the tone is so different. I feel like the guys who wrote Star Trek for The Voyage Home must have watched this and been like, we're going to do that with Star Trek, right? Because it's them going back, these, apes from the future, intelligent apes. that are in modern society. When this was made, it was 70, 71, 70. So that's what they ended up doing with this. So it's kind of a fish out of water comedy. Um, but I love it. I really do like this movie. I think this is a fun movie. I think it's very different. I like how they changed it up. It's got some great, character moments. We get to know a lot more about Zira and Cornelius. Again, the actors do a great job in the makeup. The human actors, I think, do a fairly compelling job as well. There's a pretty good human villain here who's kind of coming after them and, is kind of worried about what that means for the future of humanity. We're introduced to Ricardo Montalban, who I'm a huge fan of. Of course, another Star Trek connection there. He's, the Khan, the original Khan. So, yeah, I really actually think this is a good movie. I enjoy watching this one. It's got, like I said, a lot more humor than the first two. And but it still deals with that kind of, social commentary idea of, what does this mean for humanity and all of that kind of thing. So I get a kick out of it. It has another tragic ending, and kind of a twist ending again that they pull off rather well. And so it has an emotional core to it that I think I really kind of grab onto. Again, I think because Cornelius and Zira have such a vital role in those first two films, that making them the main characters now made a lot of sense and I think really worked. So I'm a pretty big fan of Escape. I don't know about you guys. Ben, why don't you give me your thoughts on this one?
I think out of the original five, this is the best of the sequels since the
I
very
think that
classic
too. Yeah.
original.
Yeah.
I love how it's sort of a return to form, but in reverse. I don't know if you're familiar with the original Pierre Boulle novel, but when the astronauts come to the planet, it's a society very similar to that of the 60s and 70s from the 20th century. And in the beginning, he's welcomed and he notices how beastly everything is and feels even more alienated than before. And so now in this film, we see Cornelius and Zero travel 2,000 years to the past. And the way humans tend to go along with life is not that much different compared to how the apes handle the humans in the original film. And I found that really interesting, especially when things turn from an opening like welcome, warm hug feeling to a night of terror, pretty much.
Yeah.
Right when the humans figure out what the future has in store for them, they want to have the apes killed. And so it gets terrifying by the time the film wraps up. You just feel for the apes and not the humans for the first time, especially fact because it's Cornelius and Zira, which by the way, I think Kim Hunter gives her best in this film.
Yep.
As a performer. Not saying that Roddy McDowall didn't do a bad job, but it was Kim Hunter's movie, my opinion. So
I agree.
great film. I loved the Eric Braeden. He was kind of like a 007 villain. I got that vibe from him. And I wish we'd gotten more, but I love how he mirrors Dr. Zaius in a lot of ways. Because everything he does, I know Dr. Zaius would have done if it was Taylor and Nova. Of course, he would have done that. So
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep. Great points. Anthony, what are your thoughts on Escape?
It is definitely better than the second one,
Right.
obviously.
Yeah.
It is
It's
kind of
going
a
back
cool,
up.
yeah, it is kind of a cool flip, like a reverse from the
Yeah.
first one.
Yeah.
Instead of humans, it's apes
Yeah.
that discover this whole world where it's not like an ape society, it's a human society, which is
Right.
weird to them. So
Yes.
it's kind of a cool reverse, you know.
Definitely. Yeah, it's very smart. Smart
Mhm.
screenplay, smart writing, smart direction.
Yeah.
Great performances. So yeah, this is a really solid one. Let's move along to 1972 and the next film directed by J. Lee Thompson, who's a pretty prolific director back then. He directed several movies I like, one being The Guns of Navarone. It's a very popular kind of World War II movie. It's called Conquest of the Planet of the Apes. And so this one jumps ahead in the timeline to the 1990s. And we see that there's been a virus that has affected pets, specifically cats and dogs, have been wiped out. And so now apes are the primary household pet, and they're treated very poorly, even though they're gaining intelligence. This one had a lower budget, only a $1.7 million budget, ended up grossing 9.7 million. This is, if you watch the unrated cut at least, the darkest of the original films for sure. It's about the kind of revolution that this young ape who was the child of Cornelius and Zira is starting. He's named Caesar. I'm not sure why his name changed from Milo to Caesar between movies. I don't
You
think
mean
they
Aldo?
ever really.
I think it was Aldo.
Aldo. I think,
Aldo.
yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
You're right. So I don't know why they changed the name. I don't know if that was, I guess, Ricardo Montalban's character decided to rename him Caesar. I'm not really sure why, but um, it's fitting. It's a fitting name for the character because, he's becomes this leader, this political leader. So it's kind of more of a dystopian future film. It's, the the visual style matches the story. It's very dimly lit, a lot of scenes at night, especially towards the end. Um, and so McDowell is doing a totally different performance from Cornelius here. So you get to see his range as an actor, which I think is pretty significant. And playing this character who's kind of discovering the mistreatment of his kind, and so he, leads this uprising. It just doesn't, to me, have quite the impact that it should. I think the unrated cut does a better version, certainly. It's almost maybe too violent for these movies. It's like they're kind of, I mean, I don't know if I would call them family friendly, but they're like PG rated movies until you get here and it's like, whoa, things got serious and dark really fast. But I think they utilized that pretty well. I just don't think the movie is very well paced. I think it kind of is all over the place. It's a little bit messy in regards to the story. It's not one that I'm like always looking forward to watching necessarily, even though it certainly has merit. So I'm a little more mixed on this one, I think, than the others. I think this is again a movie that has some great kind of social political ideas going on. I just don't think they're as presented quite as well as they had been in the past. So I like it. I'm not a huge fan though of Conquest. But Ben, give us your thoughts on this entry.
When I was little, I would have considered, well, I did consider this the best of the franchise. I'm a big action guy, and I just love seeing the apes revolt. That's the story I've always wanted to see told on the big screen after seeing the first Planet of the Apes. Like, I want to know, like, how did humanity fall? How
Right.
did the apes rise? You know? And so
Sure.
they give you an alternate take to what happened, even though it's different to what Cornelius tells Dr. Hasline in Escape from the Planet of the Apes. But based on what we saw, I loved how J. Lee Thompson made the future look more like a George Orwellian 1984 fascist world
Yeah.
where it's run by this Hitler-like governor, and the apes are persecuted in a manner which metaphorically it reminded me of and I think you probably know this. It's sort of a metaphor to the race riots that were
Oh,
happening
sure.
during the 60s,
Yeah,
70s.
absolutely. Yeah.
And apparently the film had a huge African American cheer during the day. It had a lot of powerful things to say just about persecution, discrimination, freedom, revolution. And based off the story that was told, yeah, I agree. I think the film would have worked better if it was longer. It
Mm.
kind of goes a bit too quick for me, but
Yeah.
yeah, there's a lot of great moments. Roddy McDowall gives, I think, his best performance ever out of all the five Planet of the Apes films. His final speech, I'm counting the unrated cut, not the theatrical cut. The unrated speech was
Yeah,
powerful.
definitely.
And I love how the film ended in the unrated cut, not the theatrical cut.
Yes.
So, yeah, a lot of themes and a lot of violence and a lot of dark visual imagery
Yeah.
packed together into this film. So it's my third favorite, I would
Okay,
say,
okay.
in that
Cool.
those original five.
All right, Anthony, what are your thoughts on Conquest?
I think it's the worst.
Oh, really?
Out of the
Okay.
original
Really?
saga, I guess.
Okay.
Yes.
Oh, wow. Okay.
The reason
Okay.
is because when the apes, are revolting and all of that, it's not a real like resist or rising.
Yeah.
They're sort of like sneaking around. Like, what's up with that?
Yeah.
But that's not exciting at all. They're just
Right.
sneaking around, I think Rise did it a lot
Yeah,
better.
sure. Gotcha. Okay. All right. Let's move right along to 1973 and Battle for the Planet of the Apes. So J. Lee Thompson comes back to direct, and to me, this is his weakest direction. It's the weakest script. To me, it kind of ends with a whimper, unfortunately. And the title, suggests this huge battle that's going to occur. And to me, it's a pretty weak final sequence. It's kind of slow and just I don't know. It's just not very well edited or put together, not very well shot. This is apocalyptic film, so this is years later. The bombs have gone off, right? So you have this ape society that's living alongside some humans as well, which I think is really cool. I like that aspect of it. The kind of setup of the whole thing is pretty good because you have this kind of war-hungry gorilla character, and then of course we discover the humans, living underground that want to go to war with the rest of the apes, and so it's kind of an interesting setup. It's to me, it's just not well executed, all the way through the film. There's some cool moments. There's a kind of cool journey we take with, some of the apes and humans go on this journey, and there's some pretty good imagery in the film, but I think overall it's pretty weak. I like seeing Caesar and his family. I think that was a cool element. It's just again, it's not explored as well as I think it should have been. So there's elements here that kind of work, but again, it's just not fully realized. I feel like this movie could have used a couple more drafts of the screenplay to really, kind of hone it in. Budget of 1.7 million, same budget as Conquest. Grossed less than Conquest. That's I think why this was the last film, only 8.8 million at the box office. So this is where it kind of leaves off these original 5 films until 2001, which we'll get into in just a minute. But Ben, give us your thoughts on Battle for the Planet of the Apes.
I think this is or was the most kiddie and cheap picture out of the 5. It's not the story I think they should have told after ending things with Conquest, even though I thought Conquest was a good ending throughout the story. It kind of the rage just leads right back into the very first film, and it would have been fine if it ended there.
Sure.
So if they were going to do a sequel, my hope was that they would do a part 2 of Conquest. What was the story right after killing Governor Breck? Would we see the bombs drop or anything? I know they probably wouldn't have the budget or the balls to pull off something like that, but that's the story I wanted. Instead, we got this treehouse, kid-friendly film, which has ties back to Beneath the Planet of the Apes, which I did like in the extended cut. I'm going off the extended cut of Battle for the Planet of the Apes. I thought that was a passable conclusion, but yeah, it was just a very, very weak film compared to Conquest. Great ideas. I liked Claude Akins. He was good. You can tell that he was trying to give it his all with the material he was given. And Paul Williams as Virgil, I thought he was cool, even though I still don't think Apes will be that intellectual after 12 years. I just don't.
I don't understand.
I don't believe that. Plus the uniforms. Where did they get the
that too?
the fabric for all of that? Surely they'd be wearing something similar to what they wore in Conquest. So yeah, there's a lot of imagination left on the table. Facts left on the table. It leaves you with just what ifs and ours and what could possibly be
Right. Yeah.
the end product. So yeah, that's Battle. I will say I did like the prologue and the epilogue because it was John Huston.
Oh yeah.
You can never hate John Huston.
Absolutely.
I wish he had more of a prominent character and that he existed during the time of Caesar. That would have been interesting, but yeah, that's Battle for the Planet of the Apes.
Yeah. The end shot with the tear always always made me so confused, and I love the poetic imagery of it, but at the same time I'm like, how? What? Why? It's kind of strange. But Anthony, give us your thoughts on Battle.
I did think it was an okay, a full circle story, kind of tying it back to the first movie and maybe the second one because the underground people, that's the mutated people, right?
Seems like it, yeah.
Yeah. And I think some elements of this were put into, I think maybe Dawn and War. I think.
Sure. A little bit, yeah.
Yeah. So, it's okay, I guess.
Gotcha. All right. Let's move right along. Like I mentioned, that decades. 2001 was the next time we got a Apes film. It had been kind of in development for a while, but finally they got it made via director Tim Burton with Planet of the Apes. We'll refer to it as Planet of the Apes 2001, I guess. It's basically a remake of the original. That was kind of the idea. I think Burton, listened to the commentary with him. He really wasn't into that idea. He wanted to do more of what he considered, I think he called it a reimagining or something like that. where he kind of take the basic ideas and kind of put his own spin on it. Tell a slightly different story, although, you know, it has all the major beats of the original film are here. Um, it's you know, he was a huge fan of Planet of the Apes growing up, so that's I think why he wanted to do it. And you know, the opportunity to obviously, you know, do the makeup again in a, you know, even more believable way, which that's the highlight of this movie for me is the makeup, which looks phenomenal. I don't know how they pulled it off. I mean, it looks so good, maybe too good. I mean, it's like it's almost yeah, it's just mind blowing to think about that there's actors behind those ape faces. So the makeup's great, the effects are good. You know, there's not an overuse of CGI here, which I think is a good thing too. You know, I think it balances out the practical effects pretty well. Tim Burton talked a lot about how many miniatures they made and how much, you know, they tried to shoot on location as they could and things like that. So I commend it for the filmmaking aspects of it. Danny Elfman's score, I think, is pretty good here. Um, the cast is a bit all over the place. I think Mark Wahlberg is okay as the lead. He's kind of very blank by the numbers, you know, generic movie hero guy, which I think, you know, Tim Burton talked about that in the commentary. He kind of wanted it to be a more of a throwback B movie type feel. So maybe that was intentional. I don't know, but I'd rather have something charismatic I can, you know, grab onto and something emotional to connect me with the character, but there's not really much there. Tim Roth is fantastic as General Thade. I think he delivers a wonderful performance, very into it. Michael Clark Duncan, I think, is very good as well. So there's some, you know, even Helena Bonham Carter I like in the movie as well. But I think overall it just kind of falls flat. It doesn't really do a lot for me as far as like, you know, being a really exciting, entertaining movie that I can, you know, rewatch over and over again. I like it. I like a lot of aspects of it. I just think it doesn't do enough to set itself apart from the original. I would have rather them taken it in a more different direction than they did. And there's some unique ideas here, certainly, but I don't think it always fully delivers on that. So that's kind of where I'm at with this one. A lot to like, but not it's not, you know, on par with the original at all. I think it's it's always so hard to remake such a classic movie that again, I don't think they changed up enough to make it, you know, worthy of the title. So Ben, give us your thoughts on this 2001 remake or reimagining of Planet of the Apes.
When I first saw it, back when I was 10 or no, 11 years old, I liked it, but
Okay.
upon rewatching it, I just find it absolutely confusing.
Right.
I'm surprised that I liked it to begin with. As much as I love the costuming, the makeup was impressive, along with the performances of Tim Roth and Helena Bonham Carter. Paul Giamatti, too. I did like
Oh
Paul Giamatti. I
yeah,
always love Paul
Right.
Giamatti.
he's great in that.
It was just a very confusing film, you know?
Mm.
In the original Planet of the Apes film, they give you cues and they give you links to things. But in this film, they leave you with string theory or whatever. You know, he goes
Yeah,
through this storm, ends
you're
up on
right.
this different planet. We don't know if this planet is Earth. Then he goes back to Earth and sees that
Right.
that Earth is run by planets. So did the
Yeah.
apes travel through the storm? Did they travel through the storm? I don't know. It makes no sense whatsoever. So yeah, Mark Wahlberg, he's okay. The final battle is cool. It's just a mixed bag for me. As much as I love Tim Burton, I think he's a fantastic filmmaker. I love his early work. I'm looking forward to his Beetlejuice remake. Planet of the Apes, 2001. It's just, I know we're supposed to rank these movies later. I don't know where to put that film. I really
Right.
don't. That's
Yeah.
how much I just am mixed with this movie. It doesn't hit the right notes for me as a fan.
Yeah, yeah, I got you. It had a budget of 100 million, grossed 362, so it wasn't a big flop or anything, but um I do like what they did with the yeah, yeah, I do like what they did with the apes movements and how they could jump
Right.
around and that
Yeah.
kind of added a different element, which was pretty neat. Wait, Anthony, what do you think about this one?
I actually really like this
Do you?
one.
Okay.
Yeah, I
Okay.
do.
Cool.
I also like
Okay.
Mark Wahlberg, so maybe that's why I like it so much.
Sure.
The thing that I really like about this movie though is the lore behind
Mm,
it, with the whole time travel stuff and all that.
yeah.
It's really confusing, but that's why I like it because
Yeah.
it is confusing.
Yeah.
And
You have to kind of figure it out.
right.
Yeah.
And the ending, I actually really like the ending.
Yeah. The
Yeah.
ending is it is a fun image. I've got to
Uh-huh.
say, like,
Yeah.
just to see and I would imagine like Tim Burton trying to come up with what's going to be my last shot. I've got to try to not replicate, but like try to match the original Statue of Liberty moment. And how can I do that? What's another famous monument? And to go with Ape Lincoln is just kind of, to me, a stroke of genius in many ways. But I know some people are kind of put off by it, but I really like
Yeah.
that moment. So, all right, let's move right along to the next film, which is a full reboot of the film series. New writers came on board. Director Rupert Wyatt came on board to helm a film which was originally titled Caesar: Rise of the Apes, later retitled Rise of the Planet of the Apes. And so this movie had a $93 million budget, ended up grossing $481 million at the box office. So it was a huge hit. There was a lot of hype around this movie. I remember back in 2010, 2011 when it was announced, and when we found out Andy Serkis was going to star, another performance capture technology movie. He of course come off of playing Gollum in Lord of the Rings. So a lot of excitement around this film, bringing it back, bringing the franchise back in a big way. And they certainly did. They went a great route of telling a character-centric story about Caesar. And I think that's the strength of this movie. When you're bringing back a long dormant franchise, you have to me, the idea of setting it around a character was so cool and so important and such a great move rather than trying to remake the original or trying to stay closer to the book or something like that. They said, no, let's just tell the backstory basically of how this all started. Let's start from the beginning, whereas Planet of the Apes kind of starts from the end. This starts from the beginning, um, and tells the story of this drug that they've created to fight Alzheimer's, and that's a great human story. It balances the two well of having the human story of James Franco's character, and Jonathan Lithgow, who's fantastic in this as well. I'm trying to cure this disease that so many people deal with, and doing that, and then having Caesar kind of come into the story is I think a really great way to do it. So I really enjoy this movie. Emotionally engaging. It tells its story well. It's well paced. It's like a tight runtime, like an hour and 40 minutes, hour 45 minutes, something like that. It's under 2 hours. So it's a pretty tight film, tightly edited, very well written, great visual storytelling too. Incredible. The performance capture technology is just absolutely amazing. I mean, really, it's mind blowing what they were able to accomplish here, with all the apes. All the apes are computer generated for the most part, which is really, really crazy to think about. So, um, really like this movie. I think they did a great job bringing it back in a fresh way that harkens back. They have callbacks to the original, right? I mean, there's some references, the Icarus, you see on the TV and things like that. A couple of lines of dialogue Tom Felton gets to deliver, harken back to the original. And so I think they handle all that really well, though. None of it feels like too fan servicey, like we're just doing this for the fans. They worked it into the story pretty well, to where it didn't feel forced. And so I like all those elements of it. It builds to a great ending. I mean, the build of the movie towards that Golden Gate Bridge sequence, it just blew me away. I mean, really, really well
That's
done.
probably my favorite part, actually.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
a great sequence. It's very well executed, well shot. The stunts and everything are handled very well. So I really like this movie. I think it's got great music too. It really handles all the elements of the storytelling very well. So, Ben, why don't you go ahead and give us your thoughts on Rise of the Planet of the Apes?
I was really, really, really excited when I found out they were going to be rebooting Planet of the Apes. When they first brought out, came about the project, when I first heard about it, I was under the impression that it was going to be a prequel to the classic original film, but then I get another article stating like, oh no, this is not a prequel. This is a what if, like, we're gonna go into modern day times and give you a what if scenario. Like, suppose the concept of Planet of the Apes came into being in our time. What would that look like? Would it be a nuclear fallout? I thought it was going to be a nuclear fallout like the classic originals, but instead we're given this Frankenstein like story through experimental drugs and stories of primate pets attacking people. I'm like, this actually is a bit more grounded, makes more sense to be a Planet of the Apes story. And I love that in this film it centers on just one ape instead of a
Mm.
multitude. That Caesar, the first great ape. And I love how it pulls off things from the classic original films. Like the first thing that Caesar says is no. That scene in particular, I know you guys said that the Golden Gate Bridge is your favorite scene. My favorite scene is when he says no for the
Yeah,
first time, how
it's a great
powerful it
moment.
is, and everyone is silent. I
Right.
remember seeing it in the theaters for the first time. We were all like rooting for Caesar, and then you hear Tom Felton say the famous line, "Take your stinking paw off me, you damn dirty ape." Then he
Right.
says no.
Yeah.
Everyone was quiet. I
Yeah.
was
It
quiet.
went silent. I know. I remember that. Yeah.
I didn't think he was going to speak, and I'm
Yeah.
so happy that they put that in there because right
Right.
afterwards the film was on fire.
Yeah.
I just love Caesar's arc from a little chimp being a pet to him going into his teen years, becoming self-aware that he's on a leash and that he shouldn't be on a leash when he has such a high human intellect, even more so than that of his father's father, Will's father. He's like,
Mm.
why am I treated like a pet if I have more intelligence than this guy right here? And
Right.
so I just love that it's about him seeking a community. It's not him trying to punish humanity. It's just him wanting to have a life outside of humanity where he can feel belonged. So it was touching. But the thing that makes it Planet of the Apes, in my opinion, is when you discover that the drug that makes the apes become intelligent also has an effect on humans, killing them, making the apes more dominant in the process. So I'm like, oh, okay, that is the key to more sequels. So overall, on a visual standpoint, it's okay as a movie. There aren't that many eye-popping shots, in my opinion, but Andy Serkis, like you said, Andy Serkis, Gollum, King Kong, the Captain from Adventures of Tintin, fantastic,
Yeah.
fantastic as always. And I think this is his second best after Gollum. Gollum will always be number one for me, but number two definitely has to be Caesar from this trilogy of films. So
Great. Great
those are
stuff.
my thoughts, concise thoughts on Rise of the Planet of the Apes.
Cool. Cool. Anthony, what do you think about this one?
Definitely a step up from the previous movies. Caesar is a really great character. Will also is a great character, and the bridge scene, it's just so cool.
Yeah.
It's really cool. The uprising of the
Yeah.
apes is really cool.
Great. Great stuff. All right. Let's move on to its sequel, which this came out in 2011. And then, of course, the studio wants the sequel out. So in 2014, we get Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. And Rupert Wyatt did not return to direct. He wanted more time to develop the story and to shoot the film. So they brought on Matt Reeves, hot off the success of Cloverfield and Let Me In. Writer-director comes in and, directs this movie. Budget of 170 million, grossed $710.6 million worldwide, making it the highest grossing Apes film to date. It is a really interesting sequel that jumps about 10 years in the future, where we left off in Rise. The simian flu has taken the world by storm, wiped out most of humanity. What's left of humanity, those who are immune, are living in colonies, in cities, and the apes have grown into a larger community, living in the Muir Woods right outside of San Francisco. They have not had any contact with humanity for over 2 years and have created their own, society, have their own laws, ape no kill ape, ape together strong. And so that's kind of what they live by. Caesar is their leader. Caesar now has a family. He and Cornelia have two children. One is named Blue Eyes, and Blue Eyes serves a really important purpose in this story. He's kind of, you know, obviously learning from his father Caesar, but also Koba is having a big influence on him. Koba, who I forgot, when rewatching these, what a big role Koba has in the rise of the Planet of the Apes. We see him throughout that film and find out that he's been experimented on many times in labs by humans and things like that. So um, this film he gets an even larger role, and he is basically the primary antagonist of the film because he really has a hatred of humanity. He's on a mission of revenge throughout this movie, and he's sort of fanning the flames of war between humans and apes. The apes come into contact with humans throughout the course of the movie, and we realize that these humans are trying to, get power back to the city of San Francisco via a dam, which is in the apes' territory. So there's high tension between the two groups, and it comes to a head at the end of the movie. There is a large battle in San Francisco of between the apes and the humans. It's a great story of, brother versus brother because Koba and Caesar butt heads, even though, they have respect for one another. They have, different points of view. Like I said, Koba has seen the worst of humanity. Caesar was raised by humans in a very loving environment. So they have just very different kind of points of view. And those, come into conflict with one another. Blue Eyes, again, being the character between the two, not sure, who to trust. And I really like the human cast here too. I think Jason Clarke gives a great performance as Malcolm. He's a great human character who has a lot of empathy for the apes, but understands that humanity needs power to survive and to thrive, kind of rebuild civilization. And he has a son of his own, Alexander, played by Cody Smith McPhee, who also does a great job. Kerry Russell I like a lot in this, and of course the great Gary Oldman is fantastic. He's another character that I really like that has layers and depth to him. I mean, he's a guy who's just looking out for humanity, basically. He doesn't have any vendetta against the apes necessarily, but he just sees them as animals, and if the animals are in our way, we need to wipe them out. And so it's a great kind of mix of all these characters and storylines and ideas that is just weaved together in this fantastic film. I really have a blast with this. It looks great. It's shot really well, edited very well. Giacchino comes in and does a great job with the score. And so this one I'm a pretty big fan of. I really, really enjoy what they did with this movie. And it's just a thrilling finale. The not only the battle with the humans, but the battle between Koba and Caesar is just a really, really intense moment in the movie. So really like this one. Ben, what do you think about Dawn?
I consider this the first blockbuster in the entire franchise. Like this was the summer blockbuster. It blew me away upon first viewing. I love how middle ground it is. It's
Mm,
comprised of an ensemble. It's both an ape story and a human story. And you see that they both are looking for reasonable things. You understand why people are the way they are. And so, yes, you may say that Koba is evil, but in actuality, just based off his backstory, it makes sense that he would go about doing what he ends up doing, even though it's selfish of him and he's not thinking about other apes.
Right.
And yeah, very complex. I love as much as I liked Rupert Wyatt's direction in Rise of the Planet of the Apes, Matt Reeves' direction, in my opinion, was infinitely times better. He had a strong, passionate Shakespearean direction this time around.
uh,
Michael Giacchino had sort of a Jerry Goldsmithian type of score, which I love. It owed it back to the original Planet of the Apes film, which I thought was great, gave me the chills. I love the pacing of it. the way that it ends, it's like Empire Strikes Back. You know that things happen, things are not going to change. It's going to be different from now on. So it's great on a character standpoint, action standpoint, editing standpoint. It's just the perfect movie. I can see no flaw in this film. It's the best one since the first, very original Planet of the Apes, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Great film. Great
Excellent.
film.
Excellent. Anthony, what do you think about Dawn?
I really like that it's full circle. It begins and ends the same way. With the beginning is zooming out of Caesar's eyes, and the ending is zooming into Caesar's
That's right.
eyes.
Yeah, that's a great.
All of this happened. Oh, so much happened. All that.
Yeah, yeah.
Koba is a really, really like I guess scary villain.
Yeah.
Honestly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
Your worst nightmare. On the Planet of the
Yeah.
Apes, pretty much. It's Koba.
Yeah.
Sure.
And Caesar, he's a great character.
Yeah. Yeah, they do a
So
great
much,
job.
so much has happened to him and all of that.
Yeah.
He becomes the leader of the apes and all of that. It's just, it's really cool.
Yeah. Yeah. Excellent movie. All right, let's jump into the third film in the, I guess what we can call the Caesar trilogy, this reboot franchise timeline here, War for the Planet of the Apes. This one was released in 2017, also written and directed by Matt Reeves. Budget of 152 million, grossed 490.7 million. So this one, brings Caesar's story to an end. And to me, it's a very satisfying conclusion to this story. Like you were saying, he's been through so much on his journey, and here he gets really put through the ringer even more. The opening of the movie, we kind of build off of Dawn, where transmission went out to the U.S. Army up north, and they've come down now and are hunting down Caesar. There is an interesting bit of information that we don't get in the novelization, which I was reading about online. In the novelization, when the army comes down, the colonel, played in the film by Woody Harrelson, finds Malcolm, who tells him about Caesar and basically explains the situation and says, we need to leave them alone. And the colonel executes Malcolm. So the colonel is very vindictive. He's on a mission to wipe out the apes. He's, I guess you could say, on a personal revenge mission. When we get his backstory, we find out what happened to his son, and things like that make it very interesting and kind of explain further how we're getting closer to that original movie, right? Of humans not being able to speak and things like that, human intelligence dwindling as ape intelligence rises. So it did a great job of explaining all of that in a concise way that wasn't distracting or felt like here's a big heavy exposition scene. It just felt a natural part of what the characters were discussing, where the characters were in the story. Like I said, Caesar has great personal loss in this film, so it becomes a revenge story more for him, which we haven't really seen before. So Caesar's at a very desperate place in this movie, as the army is closing in on him, the army of humans, and it sort of becomes the great escape with apes, the great ape escape, you might say. As all the prisoners, the ape prisoners are put away in this facility, and Caesar, and I like that it's Caesar, it's Maurice, right, who we've had through all the three movies, and it's Rocket throughout this story. I like that they're kind of a unit in this movie, and it's very focused and really intimate, even though it gets pretty big, and the scale of this one I think is the biggest yet, but it still feels very character focused, which I think is great. Never loses sight of the story that it's telling of Caesar, becoming this figure in ape history that we'll talk more about in the next movie. But I think they do a great job here. The movie does feel pretty epic. I mean, there's some huge shots of landscapes. I think of the different locations of them in the woods in the beginning and then them in the snow. I think that was such a cool environment to see the apes in. And then there's the shots of them riding the horses on the beach, which is just an iconic Planet of the Apes thing that I feel like they've kind of replicated now in many of the movies, which I think is really cool. And then the war at the end of the movie. We get a little bit of it at the beginning, but really we get it at the end. And it's some just phenomenal action sequences, just some great stuff. But again, it's not action oriented. It's really, again, still a story that's focused on Caesar and what he's been through and what he's going through. And so I'm a huge fan of War. I think it's a great way to conclude his story, and yet, of course, there's more story to tell with this world that they've built. But it just feels like when you can close out a trilogy, that's why typically the third film will be my favorite if it's a good ending. It's hard to pull off. But here they really pull off a great ending for Caesar. So, Ben, give us your thoughts on War.
First off, I have to acknowledge the genius of Matt Reeves as a filmmaker. Ever since I heard he was going to be helming the third Planet of the Apes film following Dawn, I thought initially it was going to be Dawn 2.0, but instead of it being an action-driven blockbuster, he instead gives you this psychological, vengeance-driven biblical epic that turns the entire story of Caesar Rise, Dawn, and War into this big mythology that the apes will follow in time. So, yeah, it's if Apocalypse Now, Ten Commandments, and Planet of the Apes had a baby. That's the best way I would describe War for the Planet of the Apes. And it's dark.
Yeah.
It's dark. It's brutal. I know people say you can't call it war. There aren't enough action sequences. War doesn't have to be just about action. War can be about loss. It can be about vengeance. It can be about pain.
Yep.
And the fact that Caesar has to go through all this all because he has human-like traits, because he acts on emotion, it's really painful film. He's at war with his spirit, so I think it earns that title. And I love the journey. Like you said, they start off in the woods and they go to the beach. And then when they go to the snow, on a visual effects standpoint, very impressive. I don't think we've ever seen anything done like that before. The fact they were able to pull it off.
Right.
Well done.
Definitely.
And I know not a lot of people like this, but I loved Steve Zahn as Bad Ape. We needed a little,
I love that
just
too.
a little bit of humor. It was getting really dark. We had to just lighten it up just a little bit. So I cracked up when we first saw Bad Ape in a hotel similar to that of The Shining. Like, that was a great way to introduce a funny character.
Yeah.
And yeah, he's nowhere near the absurdity of Jar Jar Binks. Whoever is putting that online, like, come on, guys. He's not Jar Jar Binks. Come on. So, yeah, like you said, I love how it just continues to explain how things from the 1968 film came to be about. I love that the virus that wiped out all humanity suddenly changed, mutated, and started to render some people from speaking. So, yeah, very tragic film, not on Caesar's standpoint, but also on account of the fall of humanity. So overall, what a powerful, tragic ending to this trilogy. A very underrated trilogy, and I wish more people would watch it because it's great. It's a great trilogy overall. Oh, one more thing, Andy Serkis. Andy Serkis should have gotten an Oscar. That's the last thing I'll say. He should have gotten an Oscar for this movie. He gave his best performance.
I agree. 100%. Anthony, what are your thoughts on War?
So much happened in this,
Yeah, a lot.
Yeah. I guess I'll start with how emotional this movie is compared to the last two. This one is way more emotional.
Oh, yeah. I agree.
Yes.
With all the stuff happening in the war, and especially the part where Caesar finds the colonel. He lost his speech, I guess, and yeah. It was very sad.
It was, absolutely. Yeah, that's the thing, is they even make these villains sympathetic. Like you understand their point of view, where they're coming from. even though I mean the Colonel's pretty brutal, the way he
Yeah.
deals with the apes at least, but again, you kind of get it and
Yeah.
you feel for him at the end. So yeah, that's testament to the writing, to the
Hmm.
direction, to the performances. Um, yeah, I agree, Brent. Ben, Andy Serkis definitely should have at least been nominated. I get is it a special effect or a performance? Well, it's both. So, maybe it should have its own category. I don't know. I would nominate him for best actor, but
He gave his soul for
I
crying out loud.
agree.
He
I
gave his
agree.
actual soul into this
Yeah,
role.
right.
So,
100%, 100%. So great way to leave it off.
Mhm.
Great way to end the trilogy, but the saga is not complete. This film leaves off with the end of Caesar, but a new beginning for the apes. And this is where we pick up with the latest film, which is now in theaters. You can watch our reaction to it on the channel right now. It's Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. And this film was, oh, nice
Oh, cool.
poster. Wow, that's cool. Did
Cool.
you see it in IMAX or?
I didn't, but they had these posters at the theater that I went to go see the
Oh,
movie at.
cool.
So as soon as I was walking out, I saw them standing there. And I grabbed one immediately. I'm
That's
like, yeah,
great.
this. So
Yeah, that's awesome. Great artwork.
yeah.
Cool. So yeah, Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. The director is Wes Ball, who I'm a big fan of because I really like his Maze Runner movies. I think that's another underrated trilogy that more people should check out. Really like those movies a lot. This is his fourth film after directing all of those movies. He made a short film also titled Ruin, which I would check out online. He was going to direct The Mouse Guard before Fox was sold to Disney. You can also watch the test footage of that on his YouTube channel. Go to Wes Ball's YouTube channel. It's really cool footage. I hope he gets to make that movie one day. Um, he had two titles for this movie. I watched an interview with him recently. His original title was Empire of the Planet of the Apes. They ended up going with Kingdom, which, same idea. I think they wanted to veer away from the Star Wars comparisons, so
Oh,
they went with Kingdom. But uh, it's got a budget of about 165 million. Already, just in the previews, Thursday night previews is all I've looked up. It grossed 6.6 million, which is the highest ever for the franchise. So it looks to be a big weekend for Kingdom. And this is, the fourth entry in the saga. There have been some recent interviews with producers that are planning a 9-film saga with Planet of the Apes. So this is our
really?
fourth of
9?
9. Yeah.
Really?
They want to do this trilogy, a new trilogy, and then one more after it to bring it full circle. So I'm
Oh,
excited about that. I think that's a
Me
great
too.
plan. I'm glad they have a plan. And I think
okay.
that's a cool idea to, eventually lead into, I guess the ninth film could be a remake of the original movie if they wanted to do that, or their own version of it. So, um, this movie though continues the story in a very compelling way because, again, they keep it character focused. We're introduced to Noah, played by Owen Teague, who does a fantastic job in this role. Young actor, I think he's only 25. This is his first major role. I know he was in the It movies, and he's been in other things, but this is his first big breakout role in a big blockbuster film where he's the lead. And I was just riveted by his performance all the way through. He really played the character very well. He's a very likable character. He's a very relatable character. Sort of a coming of age story with Noah. And it's definitely a journey. I mean, really, even more so than War. I feel like we went on a journey with Noah. Like he really has to, I mean, literally has to travel across great distances throughout the film. And again, just that whole kind of character arc he has of coming into his own and figuring out, what he wants to fight for and who he is and that kind of thing. So it's a very kind of classic hero's journey in many ways. It feels in some ways like Star Wars: A New Hope, kind of, leaving home and going on this big adventure. Um, so I really like that aspect of it, of keeping it focused on him. He encounters several characters, including Raka, who was a favorite of mine. I really liked Raka in this movie. I think he's a great new character, and kind of everything that he brought to the table of, the myth of Caesar and how it's sort of been corrupted by some, because this is about 300 years later. So we're getting a huge time jump here. And, We've got all kinds of different clans of apes. Noah's part of the eagle clan. They kind of train these eagles to, do things for them. And it's just a really fascinating world building that they continued to do here. And what's going on with the humans, we get a little bit of that as well. We'll keep things spoiler free for now. We can maybe get into spoilers in a minute, but we'll keep our just general thoughts here. I really enjoyed the movie. I'd say it's really on par with the previous trilogy of Caesar films. So really had a great time watching it. Kevin Durand as Proximus is such a great performance. I really enjoyed what he did with that character. Very, very, very compelling and interesting and different type of character that he brought to the table there. So great action sequences. It's a big movie, but again, they keep it, squarely focused in on Noah and what he's going through with the characters around him. Great action sequences. Towards the end, there's some really intense moments, which play into his name very appropriately, I'll say, of Noah. Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I'll just, again, we'll keep things spoiler free for now. Ben, give us just your quick kind of general spoiler free thoughts on this one. I know you have a connection with Mr. Owen Teague, which you need to talk about briefly. So tell us your connection with the star of this movie. Because he's from right here in Tampa, Florida.
Yes, he is. Yeah, he is from Tampa. I met him 10 years ago, actually. It was freshman year. I went to Blake High School for musical theater. We weren't taking any acting classes together, but I met him during this first pre-week for freshman people, and I ended up sitting right next to him. We started talking about Lord of the Rings and all these mythical books.
Because I know he's a big Andy Serkis fan.
He told me right away how big of a
acting, right?
Stephen King fan
he
was, and I didn't watch that much Stephen King's stuff yet, so I learned a lot of Stephen King from him during the time. But yeah, we took biology together, and then people started to tell me, "Oh, you know who that guy is? He's an actor." I'm like, I didn't know he was an actor. Maybe that's why he liked talking to me, because I wasn't treating him like this god or something like that. But yeah, very humble guy.
Yeah,
I don't know if you know this, but there's a lot of actors with a lot of ego. Owen's not like that at all.
That's cool.
It amazes me how humble he was. He actually came to see a show that I did. I did Les Mis a couple years ago, and he came to support me, and I was so happy to see him. So great actor. And at first, going back to Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, when they announced a new Planet of the Apes, I was not confident at all, because Disney bought Fox, and I know Disney's track record has been split in the middle with fans, and rightfully so, in my opinion, because content could be so much better. But when I found out that they were offering the lead to Owen, my enthusiasm erupted. I was on board immediately, because I know Owen, he's careful with the roles that he chooses. So the fact that he chose to take on this role and take the reins off of Andy Serkis to start a new journey on the Planet of the Apes, I'm like, yes, I'm invested.
Yeah.
So yeah, the movie, like you said, it is a new hope. I started thinking of beginning chapters of mythologies like Star Wars: A New Hope, The Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring, the first Maze Runner. I'm like, it feels like a beginning chapter, and on a character standpoint, very strong. I love it that they focus on characters first and action second.
Yeah.
And although I know some people may have issues with the pacing of this movie, I think as a Planet of the Apes movie, it was really strong. It knocked out a lot of the boxes and is among the best in the franchise. I'm not sure it's number one. I don't think so, but it was a great time.
Yeah.
If you're an Apes fan, you'll enjoy this film. For sure.
I agree. Anthony, what are your thoughts on Kingdom?
Yeah.
Without spoilers first.
Right. Yeah. I think Noah definitely is a relatable character, especially to me, because I'm young and he's young, and all the other characters are great as well. There's May, Raka, Anya, Suna as well, and then Proximus, who's a really cool villain. It was just really cool. I liked it a lot.
Great. We can talk a little bit of spoilers if you guys want. Here's your spoiler alert. So, yeah, I think where this film ends is so compelling, because We now know that there are humans underground again, but they're not worshiping a bomb. They're not mutated. They don't have psychic powers, from what we can tell. But it's a really interesting idea, and where it can lead is there's so many different ways they can go with it. Because I feel like obviously they could be setting up another big war between humans and apes, but I feel like we've seen that in the previous trilogy already. So I kind of feel like it would be cool if it went a different way and the humans and ape society kind of was integrated and they worked together to build a new future. Now, you have to have some conflict in these movies, so I don't know where that would come from, if there will be another faction of apes that come out. I like that we had a fully ape villain in this movie. There were no human villains. I thought that was a great change of pace. Kevin Durand again, just so good as Proximus. It was such a just very interesting performance. He was very into it, you could tell. And what they did with Caesar and his legend was so cool, because you have Raka, who's like, part of the Order of Caesar, and he's like telling everyone the truth. He's like telling everyone the gospel, right? It's like, here's who Caesar really was. He lived a compassionate life with humans. He wanted it to work out. He tried to make it work. And then Proximus, who takes it and is like, no, Caesar took over. He's why we have a planet of apes now, and we just need to rule the planet. So it was really interesting that the way they did that. It was really cool. The ending sequence, like I mentioned, with the flood, that was just so crazy. And again, an environment we haven't seen the apes in water like that. The gorilla chasing after Noah was
Honestly, I felt a little claustrophobic.
I know, right?
Yeah.
It was really intense. So they did a great job with that sequence. And all throughout the movie, though, I thought it was just, great big shots of overgrown cities and things like that I just really like as a sci-fi fan. Seeing that kind of post-apocalyptic world is just always really cool. So yeah, I'm a big fan of all the choices they made here. I really liked. Anything spoiler wise you guys want to jump in with?
Well, I think on a storytelling note, I found it interesting that, and this is a fact in our human history, real events happen, they become mythical or religious for certain people. And after hundreds of years, either you hear the truth, you pervert the truth, or you don't hear it at all.
Yep, it's true.
And so to integrate that idea into Planet of the Apes for a fourth Planet of the Apes is really interesting.
Right.
And I'm really happy that Wes Ball, of all directors, actually thought of that as a good idea, because it was great.
Yeah.
And I'm probably gonna bring up Owen again, but Owen's performance just with his eyes, especially when he sees his father lying dead, like wow. Yeah. His performance was so good.
It was.
You could tell that he knows he has to be older about this, but he's trying so hard just remain cool about it, even though we know he wants to erupt with anger and sadness.
Right.
Very nuanced. Very nuanced.
Yeah, I agree.
And then he goes on this journey, meets Raka. Raka was great. He was funny.
Yeah.
Then they come across the girl.
Yeah.
Then they come across a flock of humans, and then I'm so happy they implemented the hunt theme from the original Planet of the Apes during the hunt.
Yeah, they got the nets out and everything.
Chills.
Yeah,
my jaw dropped. I'm like, they actually did it.
Unfortunately, that's the scene I missed because it had to go.
Oh yeah,
that had to go to the bathroom. So
right.
I unfortunately missed that.
Go see it again.
Yeah,
you missed that.
Yeah, I had to go to the bathroom. So
it was great.
Yeah,
and then we come across Proximus Caesar. Kevin Durant, who I think when he's on screen, he steals the movie.
Yeah.
Every time he steals the movie. As great as Owen is great, he's an MVP too, but Kevin Durant as well. That voice. What a wonderful day. I love that.
Yeah.
You could tell he was having the best time of his life. Best time of his life.
Yeah.
And then, the last thing I'm going to say, it's interesting because I think this is the first Planet of the Apes film that ends on a hopeful note. All the other films ended like in a depressing or just mind-boggling idea, but this one actually, for the first time, ends hopefully.
That's true.
So either this is going to be a more hopeful trilogy, or it's going to lead to more downfall in the process. I don't know, but I really, really hope this movie does well at the box office because I'd like to see the character of Noah thrive, have Owen return, have him face new obstacles along the way. Yeah, so please let there be more.
Yeah,
Guys, if you have
absolutely.
not seen this movie yet, go see this movie.
Go see
Yeah,
it.
It's a
Yeah,
must.
support us.
yeah.
Yeah, we need more.
So,
Any spoiler thoughts, like your favorite moments or anything like that?
I think um the most surprising moment of this movie was probably the beginning. I wasn't
Oh.
expecting them to show Caesar at all.
Oh yeah,
Like,
the funeral.
I didn't.
I immediately cried.
That
I
was
had
a
no idea.
great
I'm like, they're
addition.
actually showing it. Great way
Yeah,
to open the
Mhm.
film.
yeah,
Great way.
it was.
Yeah.
It would kind of set the context, right?
Yeah.
Cool way. Yeah, great. All right, guys. Well, now we can move on to our rankings of the Planet of the Apes movies. So I think what we'll do is we'll just each go one at a time and tell each other what's at the bottom, starting at the bottom. So there should be 10 films on your list. So if you're ready, Anthony, do you want to start us with your number 10?
Sure. My number 10 is Conquest of the Planet of the Apes.
Right. You alluded that this was your least
Yeah,
favorite earlier.
My least favorite.
Okay. Okay.
I don't like the sneaking around and all that. It wasn't
It wasn't
fun.
as big as you wanted it to be.
Yes, exactly.
I gotcha.
Exactly.
I gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Ben, what do you have at 10?
I think Beneath. I think Beneath the Planet of the Apes. Because it's crammed, a lot of it just doesn't make sense, and instead of it being sophisticated and mysterious and layered, it just feels like a Saturday morning cereal.
Yeah.
Fast paced.
Right.
Plus, comparing Ted Post's direction to Franklin J. Schaffner's direction is just very weak.
Yep. I hear you.
To my eyes, it's very weak. So
I totally agree. That's where I have Beneath at the bottom, where it belongs. It's just too silly. It's just too over the top and bizarre where they take the story. I wasn't into it. Yeah, and the performances are not nearly as good either. So yeah, that's what I have at 10. Anthony, what do you have at 9?
Beneath the Planet of the
Okay,
Apes.
so you're on board with us kind of
Yeah,
in that
yeah.
it's not a great movie.
Mhm.
Okay, then what do you have at 9?
I think Battle for the Planet of the Apes.
Yeah.
The only reason why Battle is better than Beneath is that it has likable characters.
Right.
And some pretty good and hammy performances put in there. It was an okay movie.
Yeah, yeah. You and I are eye to eye on that one too. I have that at 9. Yeah, it's a little bit better than Beneath, not much, but it does a little bit better with some of the characters. Some of the ideas are a little more interesting and compelling. So yeah, that's what I have at 9. Anthony, what do you have at number 8?
Battle.
Okay,
Apes,
okay.
yeah.
So we're all pretty much on board with our bottom 3 there,
Yes.
for the most part.
Mhm.
Ben, what do you have at 8?
I have the 2001 Planet of the Apes.
Come on.
Okay. Yep.
It's just way too confusing on a storytelling note. That's why.
Sure.
The story is just very weak and it's very Hollywood-esque.
All right, so my number 8 is Conquest of the Planet of the Apes. This one again, like I feel similar to you. Like it just didn't have the scale I wanted. It didn't have the impact I wanted, even though the unrated cut is definitely better. I like aspects of that movie. It's all very dimly lit. It's not shot extremely well. Roddy McDowall's performance is definitely the highlight, though. It's definitely a great performance. So I've got to give it merit for that. But ended up at number 8 for me. So Anthony, what do you have at number 7?
I got Escape from the Planet of the Apes.
Okay, Escape. All right. All right. Ben, what do you have at 7?
I have Conquest of the Planet of the Apes.
Okay. Yeah, ours are flopped then because my number 7 is Tim Burton's Planet of the Apes. So I put that one slightly above Conquest just because the technical aspects are so good. And
Okay, yeah.
I think Tim Roth as a villain he's probably one of my favorite villains of the series, honestly. I think he's excellent in that. And the rest of the cast, I think, is really good. I think Mark Wahlberg is maybe the weakest, unfortunately, but it's not bad. It's just he didn't really give me anything to like really, grab onto. So that's what I have at 7. Anthony, what do you have at number 6?
I got Planet of the Apes 2001.
Okay, so you have Tim Burton's there.
Yes.
All right, yeah.
I think it's way better than people say,
Yeah.
honestly.
It's overhated for sure.
Yes.
I agree. Ben, what do you have at 6?
I have Escape from the Planet of the Apes.
Okay. Yep. You and me are on the same page there, man, because that's where I have Escape as well. I think it's, like you said earlier, the best of the sequels to the original. It is so different, kind of flips it on its head, like you were talking
Right, yeah.
about. And it's got some very humorous moments. It's got a great montage. I'm a huge fan of montages. It has a great ape montage of them just kind of walking around the city, getting their human clothes on and all that. It's just so much fun. Like I said, the guys who wrote Star Trek 4 had to have watched that movie and gone, that's what we're gonna do. Because it's really the same basic plot. So that's what I have at 6. All right, we're in our top 5 now. So what is your number 5, Anthony?
Planet of the Apes 1968.
Okay, so the original film.
Yep.
You have it number 5.
Mhm.
Okay. All right. Ben, what do you have at your number 5 spot?
Now, this will probably change over
Sure.
time, but as of right now, my number 5 is Rise of the Planet of the Apes.
Okay. Okay.
Still a great film, great
It
origin
is.
story.
Mhm.
Focuses a lot on Caesar, just on a more technical and like directorial, visionary standpoint. That's what brings it lower for
I
me.
agree. I agree. I think, yeah, that film is shot just pretty simply, you know?
Yeah.
Also, I feel like a couple of the characters are a little one note. Tom Felton is kind of just a generic bad guy who's kind of just mean to ape.
Yeah.
Same thing
Agreed.
with David Oyelowo, even though I like him as an actor. He's just kind of the corporate bad guy that's kind of just all about money and doesn't care about anyone or anything. So for that reason, but again, I'm glad that they decided to just focus on Caesar and make it his story. I just wish there was a little bit more nuance with the other characters. So I have that one at 5 as well. That's where I have Rise right now, at number 5. So let's move on to number 4. What do you have there, Anthony?
I got Rise of the Planet of the Apes.
Okay. Okay. So we're all pretty close with
Mhm.
our rankings in this kind of just a slightly out of order. All right, Ben, what do you have it for?
At number 4, it's the brand new Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes.
Okay.
Cool.
Okay. Yeah.
I really like the film.
Me
Anyone who's
too.
not seen it, still go see this movie. I still like it. It may change,
Right.
but as of right now, I think the 4th spot definitely. Pretty
Yep.
good.
Yep. I totally agree. That's where I have it as well. And it could go up. Honestly, the more I think about it, the more I like it. It's doing so much with the story and, like we said, with the world building and expanding the mythology and the legend of Caesar. Oh, there's so many elements of that movie that I like that I wanted to put it higher, but on one viewing, I felt like I couldn't quite do that yet. So we'll have to wait for more viewings for me to, possibly put it up higher. But right now, I have it at number 4 as well. All right, we're into our top 3 now. Anthony, what do you have at 3?
I got Dawn of the Planet of the Apes.
Oh, he has Dawn at 3. Okay. Okay, interesting. Ben, what do you have at your 3 spot?
I have Dawn as well.
Really
Okay, cool.
interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I
Great.
really love these like top 3 are like great,
Yeah, the
great.
top 3 are so hard to rank.
Great.
I agree. Yeah, for
They
sure.
are.
For me, I put the original at 3. I put
Okay.
the original Planet of the Apes film at the 3 slot. It is a groundbreaking, revolutionary movie. Does so many things so well. It's great. I don't have very many faults for it at all. So it's hard to rank it. But that's where I ended up putting it. Is at number 3. So on to our top 2. Ant, what do you have at number 2?
Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes.
Kingdom. Okay, so the latest film
Mhm.
is at your number 2 spot. Okay, excellent, excellent. All right, Ben, what do you have at 2?
Number 2, I have War for the Planet of the Apes.
Okay, okay, excellent, great, great. All right, for my number 2, I have Dawn of the Planet of the Apes.
Okay.
The middle chapter of the Caesar trilogy. Matt Reeves coming in and just blowing us all away. I remember when this movie came out and just being dumbfounded by it, speechless after it was over. It was so well done. I love the full circle narrative, like you were talking about,
Yeah.
ending and beginning on his eyes.
Mhm.
Tells such a interesting story of the humans and apes story. I feel like is balanced so well in that movie. Like you mentioned, Ben, the Shakespearean nature of it and what's going on with Koba and It's just a very, very engaging movie, very well paced, great action. I mean, there's that, I think all the time of that oneer on the tank as it just kind of moves around and Koba's on the top and you're seeing all the
Yeah.
devastation going on. Some great shots in it, some
Mhm.
great visuals, him riding through the fire and, apes shooting machine guns. It just doesn't get better than that. So, that's what I have at number two. Anthony, what is your number one Planet of the Apes movie?
War for the Planet of the Apes.
Excellent. Excellent. You got War at number one, the closer of the Caesar trilogy. Ben, what do you have at your number one?
I think it's obvious. It's the one that started it all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's left the biggest effect on me as both a movie viewer and a franchise fan. It's the classic 1968 Planet of the Apes.
Yep. Tough to beat it, man. Like I said, it was tough to rank these top three because that one is so memorable, iconic. Like we're talking about with the effects, the makeup effects, it was, something totally new and different. Uh, Heston's performance, everything that we talked about before. Yeah, it's such a great movie. But I've got to agree with Anthony on this one. My number one is War for the Planet of the Apes, the closer of that trilogy. To bring it to a satisfying conclusion is so difficult. So many other trilogies fail at that, and this one succeeds in spades because, like you're saying, Ben, it's this epic biblical revenge story, very character focused, yet it's got a grand scale to it. The characters are so compelling and interesting, and I like that in that one we're really with the apes the whole way through. The human story is really in the background, and it's all about Caesar, Rocket, Maurice, Bad Ape, who they meet, and Nova, who I think is another great character. That young actress did such a great job in the film. That it just really is, to me, the best of the bunch. It's the one that I keep going back to and thinking about most often. So, yeah, so that ended up at my number one.
Yeah.
All right, well, that's it, folks. We have ranked and reviewed every Planet of the Apes movie to date. This was an epic endeavor, and I really appreciate you guys coming on and helping me out. Ben, I think you're on Letterboxd, right? So people can find you there in the
Yes, I
description
am.
below. Anthony, you're on Letterboxd as well.
Yes, I am.
So we'll leave links down below so you can follow these guys there. Make sure you hit the like button, hit subscribe, hit the bell so you get notified of all our videos. Let us know your favorite Apes movie in the comments below. We want to have a conversation with you down there. We will see you next time right here on The Real World.